In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Game's lagging a little bit, but we'll manage. Okay, so we are in version 20.2 right now. For some reason I can't get 0.21 to work with my recording software, so for the time being we're going to work on keeping this in 0.20.2. And besides, we can appreciate the... Oh man, well, I was going to show you that we have the old school Kerbal Space Center down there, but we're not going to worry too much about that. Huh, we seem to have lost our reflective tech. Come on. Okay, so Mercury-Atlas 7, which is the craft we're flying here, is was the fourth manned flight in the Mercury program. The pilot, rather than good old Jeb here, is Scott Carpenter. Now, Carpenter was actually the backup pilot for this flight. What a lot of people don't know is that this flight was originally scheduled for the fourth member of the original 7 by the name of Deke Slayton. As a lot of people know, Deke Slayton was not able to complete this mission because he had what was known as a heart fibrillation. Now, the other astronauts didn't quite know what to make of this. I mean, after all, you could say everyone's heart fibrillates. But for whatever reason, Deke was prevented from flying in the rest of the manned space programs for like 30 years. He became the astronaut coordinator for Apollo, and as is dramatized in a lot of different Apollo-related films, Deke was the guy who chose essentially the crews that went to the moon. He never got to fly, and he always felt very bad about that until they discovered that later, ironically, his heart fibrillation, and he did fly on a space shuttle mission, so good for him. But how would you like that, to be an astronaut at NASA during the time of, you know, the golden ages of NASA spaceflight, and not be allowed to fly because you have a medical issue, and then to find out later that your medical issue isn't really that big an issue after all. Alright, so we're going to drop our booster. That's something I did wrong in the last flight. They would have dropped their boosters a little earlier, like that, so that they wouldn't carry them the whole way. Oh, yikes. Appo's a little high. We're going to extend that around the planet a little bit. That's what I get for not paying attention. Okay, so anyway, this mission was flown by a pilot by the name of Scott Carpenter. Carpenter, as I said, was the fourth American in space. He was also the sixth man in space, if you're interested in that kind of stat. Carpenter's mission was, unlike Glenn's, much more scientifically oriented. He had a couple of experiments he needed to perform, such as how liquids behave in weightless areas, and and we're freezing. Well, that's okay. You can listen to me talk. So he performed a couple of different tests, there we go, about how liquids perform in space, and he tried to observe, for example, I'm going to cut our engines now. He tried to observe, for example, how whether an astronaut in space could see a flare fired from the ground. It turns out he couldn't. He also engaged quite a bit in Earth photography. So a lot of the early pictures we have from... That's great. A lot of the early pictures we have from the space program are actually from this flight. Um, all the astronauts took pictures, but Carpenter was actually requested to do so. It was a part of his mission parameter. Not that it wasn't for anyone else, but they had a special emphasis on it in this particular flight. I'm going to time warp here. Come on. Okay, so now we shouldn't have such a problem with lag, because we're outside the render distance of Kerbal, and that's a nice shot. It's hard to tell where to look in this game. It's really beautifully done, but sometimes that can be a little taxing on computers, as you might notice. I'll warp over to our Apo, push it up a little bit. Dum-dum. Okay, so you can see we have a couple of differences with the video. I have been trying to fix the aspect ratio after some comments on it. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice that the nav ball is, circular now as compared to stretch. There we go. Nice orbit. That's actually pretty good. Some extra fuel, so it turns out our little antics with not watching the nav ball, or rather, not watching the apoapsis, it's not that big a deal. Okay. I'm a little concerned because I don't see a retro engine in here at all. Wonder if I didn't copy this over properly. The new save. I don't know, that looks like a retro. Oh, that's right, I have to manually fire this, don't I? Yeah. Okay. Hopefully that'll be enough to push us down inside the atmosphere. Okay. So we're going to zoom around here. Carpenter flew, like Glenn, 3 orbits, and something he discovered was a very famous mystery from the earlier flight, from Glenn's flight. He discovered what Glenn called were fireflies. Glenn very famously, when he was actually right about the Terminator, kind of like we are now, discovered that there were something he called fireflies around the outside of the capsule. Nobody knew what these were. They were kind of incandescent, they were glowing, and they kind of floated around and banged into the side of the capsule and stuff. Glenn didn't think that he didn't quite know what they were. He, as I mentioned, called them fireflies, but he thought they were very pretty, and he spent quite a bit of time looking at them and talking about them. He said it was one of the most striking moments from his particular mission. And frankly, I'm not surprised. Now, Carpenter, in his flight, this is Aurora 7. In Aurora 7, he discovered the source of those fireflies because nobody could explain them. Some of the folks at NASA thought that they might have been leaking from the capsule or whatever, but Carpenter discovered they were actually ice crystals growing, that had formed on the side of the capsule. When he banged his hand into the side of the capsule accidentally, I mean, there's not that much room inside. When he accidentally hit the side of the capsule, he knocked some loose, and he also spent some time discussing the fireflies. Okay. So, on the subject of more modern events, I apologize for not putting up a video in so long. I've been having some issues with the laptop. I've had to get it fixed, and you can see it's behaving itself pretty well, but you know how that goes. So for the time being, I'm going to try and record like 2 videos right now and just upload them one right after the other because you guys have been so patient. And we're going to try and get real-world rockets going again. Now, I've had a couple of requests to do the Gemini flights and the Apollo flights. Now, we are going to do those. We're going to do all of those. We're also going to do some of the more important probe missions after some requests for that. For example, we're going to do Surveyor 3, which will be very important later in the program. But this is primarily going to focus on manned space flight. As you can tell, I mean, I didn't fly the chimpanzee missions, for example. So what we're doing right now is we're going to finish out the Mercury missions. We have 2 more of these. We have another mission just like this with Wally Schirra. He flew a very similar mission to Carpenter. And then we have the last mission with, what was his name? They called him Gordo. That was his nickname, but I can't remember the astronaut's actual name. But we'll get to that. So we're going to fly that, and then we have 12 Mercury missions. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to fit each mission into an episode like this, but we'll have to see how that turns out, because I don't want to worry too much about length, but quite a few of them are very important. I mean, Gemini is where we learned how to do the things that we needed to do in Apollo to get to the moon. So we're going to fly each of the 12 Gemini missions, and then we're going to fly each of the, 10 Apollo missions? It's something like that. I don't want to sit here and take the time to count, but it's we're going to fly each of those missions, including things like Apollo 7 and Apollo 8. We're going to fly each of those so that we can experience the whole journey of man's trip from the Earth to the moon, which I think is quite an amazing story. I wouldn't be doing this otherwise. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're probably going to basically call it quits after Apollo 17. There's not much beyond that. I mean, I could do space station construction in orbit, but my computer doesn't really care for part counts over about 200. So we are going to have to seriously consider whether we want to take the time to do that. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm open to continuing to do this, and I'm going to try and get videos out much more often. Obviously, 4 months in between videos is a little bit ridiculous, but I'm going to put a few out right now, and that way we can figure out how we're doing. I hope you guys like the new format. I've become a little bit better at piloting since the earlier videos, and with the black bars on the side of the screen, and yes, we have this, whatever. With the black bars on the side of the screen, we fixed the aspect ratio, and I think it looks quite a bit better, but it does take some time for me to get my computer set up for episodes, so I'm going to try and do 2 or 3 at a time, and then you might not have some for a week or 2. And I can upload them every couple of days, so you guys don't go too long without an episode. Alright. Our Scott Carpenter astronaut is doing some stuff in the capsule. He's probably doing his liquid test right now. There weren't any mission-critical issues with this flight except one, and that had to do with, I don't quite fully understand it, it had to do something with the spacecraft horizon sensor, but the pilot was able to compensate for that properly and not have to worry about it, because he was able to, I mean, these guys were the best of the best. He was able to solve the problem in space and not have to worry about it. But apparently it also got very hot in the capsule during this flight, but they had enough biometric readings that they could tell Carpenter it was okay, and other than that, the capsule performed perfectly. It was a good test of the Mercury equipment, and all in all, it was a very successful flight. However, we're not going to be able to spend much more time in orbit. I mean, Carpenter flew 3 orbits, but I'm kind of running out of stuff to talk about, so we are going to, for the time being, oh, well, that's cool. We're going to spend our time looking at the Earth, the Kerbal, which should be over here now. Yay. Now, of course, Carpenter spent his time performing experiments. He also spent quite a bit of time watching Glenn's fireflies. But he only had about 4 hours of weightlessness in orbit. Since our scaling is a little different, Jeb's going to get about 2, I think. We'll have to see how that goes. And coming around here, we have 1 more orbit to go, so he's going to get a little bit more than that. Wait, do we? This should only be like orbit 2.5, right? Well, we'll see. This game really is pretty. It's nice to look at. Okay, so instead, here's a tidbit for you in case it ever comes up and you're on Jeopardy or something. You can tell them you got it here. If Deke Slayton had flown this mission, as I discussed in the beginning, he didn't because of some medical issues. If Deke Slayton had flown this mission, his capsule would have been called Delta 4. Delta is the fourth letter in the Greek alphabet, and since this was the fourth flight in the Mercury program, that would be why he called his spacecraft that. This was an interesting program in that the pilots were all allowed to name their spacecraft. Gemini pilots did not name their spacecraft, and it wasn't resumed until the later Apollo flights. I think it started in, well, Apollo 9, when they had the lunar module. They had to come up with call signs because they had two spacecraft, and so the pilots were allowed to come up with those. And that was the first time since the Mercury flights that the pilots had named their own spacecraft. Okay, I think we get the idea. I'm going to try it. Well, I do want to bring us down in daylight, though, so I'm going to probably try and deorbit us probably somewhere in here. So we're going to go around one more time and start our burn right over there. But we can look at the Earth. Kerbal. Although, hell, we could call it the Earth. We're recreating real space flights. Okay. How are we doing? Nope, not quite. Hope we have enough fuel to bring us down. Let's see. Maybe we managed it last time. Okay, so let's turn retrograde. I can't see anything. That's a little better. Okay, let's activate that engine. It's just not listed anywhere. So it must just have this icon for that. Okay, so we need to burn probably, we need to get about 200 meters per second to deorbit here. So we'll see. And I'm not sure that's going to do too hot, but we'll try it. Oh, actually, yeah. Oh, crap. Well, fun fact, Scott Carpenter came down a little off target too, because he was busy watching the Fireflies or something, or rather, he missed his burn time for some reason. I don't want to say it's because he was watching Fireflies, because that's probably not fair to him, but it was something like that. He missed his burn time slightly, and so he, yeah, we're going to come down off target too. There, added authenticity right there. I'll try and put us down in that ocean. Of course, we're going to come down half a continent away from where we wanted to. Carpenter came down about 400 miles away from his landing site. Okay, and we are out of fuel. And we're not. We're going to have a nice land landing, which is, not very historically accurate, but that's okay. Oh. Alright. Well, so, that's what I get for not watching the Nazball. We're going to come in hot, that's for darn sure. Oh, you see the lag that we experience here? Under 150k or whatever. See, I could, hope that we're going to land in that bay. I think that's a little bit of wishful thinking on my part. Well, you never know. Probably not, though. Alright, so let's get set up and do a nice re-entry attitude here. Oh, jeez. You can see we're using the old SAS. I do like the new one, but I have to admit this one's kind of nice how you can just lock onto a target. Firing our retro burn package. 2.5 hours. I don't know if I put it in extra orbit there. we're kind of taking it a little easy on the historical accuracy of this mission because, frankly, I can't really show you everything that was done in this particular flight. We don't have liquid testing packages on board. Okay, we're going to start hitting the thicker part of the atmosphere pretty quick. Alan Shepard survived an 11G descent on his re-entry, so we're going to have to see how we do. 11 Gs is really pushing it. Hopefully we won't get that high. About 1, 2 Gs. Getting the plasma sheath. 3. 4G. It's going to be pretty uncomfortable now. 5 Gs. Jeb doesn't seem to mind. Looks like we're going to top out right about 5.1, 5.2 G, which is definitely survivable. We did okay. Alright, now that we're through the plasma, we're going to dump our decoupler, which really likes to sit on top of the capsule after I kick it away. That's not really how that works. Get out of here. There, that was really, really nice. I'm sure that didn't damage the spacecraft or anything. And shoots. Or shoot, I should say. Yeah, we're going to land on the land. The capsules weren't really designed for that, but I think they probably could have handled it. Especially in the later missions. There was a particular instance which is dramatized in From the Earth to the Moon on Apollo 7, where Wally Schirra, who was the commander of that mission, and actually we will fly with next video, Wally Schirra was not impressed with the stats for a land landing and wanted a mission rule that he could call the mission off if he didn't believe it was safe. He had concerns about whether the wind would blow the capsule back over land at launch, but we will talk about that when we get to the Apollo 7 video. For now, that's like 6 years in the future from this point in the history. Coming down pretty quick. I really like the Mercury style chute. It's very accurate, in my opinion. I really like the work the FASA guys have done on this pack. It really looks nice. All the ships fly beautifully. Couldn't ask for more. In other news, we are aware that there's going to be another Apollo pack, and this is going to be like the equivalent to the FASA pack in accuracy. They're going to have full IVAs. They're going to have lunar module, I guess. It's probably not going to be out for a couple of months, so we might have to take a break when we get to the Apollo portion, but I mean, that's 15 missions away. We have some time before then. Okay, chute opens. We're going to be landing at about 516 meters above sea level. Okay, that's kind of slick. 5.6 meters per second. You get the idea. Let's warp down. Oh, it almost would be faster if I didn't warp with all the lag. Yeah. That's what we would do. No, not faster at all. Okay, so, like Scott Carpenter, we came in quite a bit off course. Oh, well. Guess we warped right into the ground. That's okay. No harm done. Okay, and with that,